How to rig an election and why it probably will not work. Donald Trump's renewed assault on American elections exposes both the fragility of democratic norms and the stubborn resilience of the system. American elections have never resembled a well-oiled machine. They are decentralized, locally administered, legally intricate and culturally improvised. Thousands of officials operate under overlapping statutes, informal customs, and judicial precedents. Ballots are printed in one office, verified in another, and certified in a third. Rules vary not merely by state, but by county, sometimes by township. To outsiders, this looks like dysfunction. To strongmen, it looks like an obstacle. To the Constitution, it is a design feature, yet for Donald Trump, this institutional untidiness has become a source of growing irritation. His second term has not brought reconciliation with electoral defeat or renewed respect for democratic competition. Instead, it has produced a more systematic effort to bend, intimidate and delegitimize the machinery of voting itself. For the first time in modern American history, argues Michael Waldman of the Brennan Center for Justice, a sitting administration is actively waging an effort to undermine an upcoming national election. The charge sounds melodramatic. But taken in aggregate, the evidence suggests not a single dramatic coup attempt, but something subtler and more corrosive: cumulative erosion, pressure officials, restrict access, sow doubt, weaponize enforcement, multiply lawsuits, inflate rumors, and hope that confusion will do what force cannot. The irony is that this strategy may fail not because it is timid, but because it is clumsy. The fantasy of presidential control. At the heart of Mr. Trump's approach lies a simple misconception, that elections are, or ought to be, an executive function. In this worldview, voting is analogous to border control or trade policy, something to be centralized, standardized, and directed from Washington. It follows that a determined president, armed with executive orders and loyal agencies, should be able to impose uniform rules from above. Hence the familiar proposals: curtail vote by mail, mandate passports or birth certificates, treat state officials as agents of the White House, demand federal monitoring in Democratic-leaning counties such as Philadelphia, Detroit, or Atlanta. These gestures hint at a gradual nationalization of voting. By rhetoric first, regulation later, they collide, however, with constitutional reality. Article 1, Section 4 assigns the times, places and manner of elections to the states. Congress may regulate aspects of federal elections. The President may not administer them. This division is neither accidental nor ambiguous. It is a deliberate attempt to prevent any single authority from controlling the franchise. As Tom Corbett, a Republican former governor and Attorney General of Pennsylvania, puts it, wishing otherwise does not make it so. Mr. Trump has never regarded constitutional text as dispositive. In 2020, his allies advanced fringe theories suggesting that state legislatures could overturn popular votes, that vice presidents could discard certified electors, and that courts should disregard settled procedure. Judges dismissed these claims. Dozens of lawsuits collapsed. Some lawyers were sanctioned. None produced credible evidence of systematic fraud. The precedent matters. It established that while the executive branch can generate noise, it cannot manufacture authority. Power in American elections is structurally fragmented. And fragmentation is stubborn. Intimidation as a substitute for control, denied formal authority. The administration has increasingly explored informal pressure points. Mr. Waldman identifies a pattern: removing federal election security specialists, hinting at law enforcement presence near polling places, invoking immigration agencies in ways that risk deterring minority participation, framing routine administrative errors as evidence of conspiracy. The most disturbing scenarios are also the most ambiguous: federal agents stationed near polling sites, National Guard units deployed under the banner of public order, temporary detentions justified as identity checks, security cordons erected in the name of counterterrorism. None of this constitutes direct administration of elections. But none of it needs to. The objective is atmospheric. It is to create a climate of unease, officials second-guessing themselves, voters hesitating, journalists amplifying rumors. In Mr. Waldman's phrase, it is about creating a cloud of suspicion. This is not a strategy for winning outright. It is a strategy for ensuring that defeat can always be portrayed as illegitimate. If victory occurs, it is celebrated as proof of integrity. If loss occurs, it is denounced as fraud. The narrative is pre-written, law as both weapon and shield. Courts occupy a peculiar position in this contest. They are both targets and bulwarks. The administration routinely evaluates legal boundaries through executive orders, emergency regulations, and aggressive enforcement actions. Even when such measures are likely to be overturned, temporary disruption can serve political ends. A blocked order still generates headlines. A failed lawsuit still fuels suspicion, yet the judiciary has so far proved less malleable than populist rhetoric assumes. District and appellate courts, often anonymous and unglamorous, have repeatedly restrained unlawful interference. Judges have demanded evidence, not insinuation. They have enforced procedural rules. They have insisted on jurisdictional limits. This quiet resistance matters more than dramatic Supreme Court confrontations. Most election interference is halted not by landmark rulings, but by obscure injunctions issued in courthouse basements. There are, however, vulnerabilities. Continued weakening of the Voting Rights Act has emboldened restrictive voting laws and aggressive redistricting. Gerrymandering stays potent, though unreliable. In wave elections, it can backfire, producing the deliciously ironic dummymander, in which over-engineered maps amplify rather than suppress opposition turnout. The lesson is familiar. Systems designed to entrench advantage often collapse under their own cleverness. Republicans against the project. One of the more revealing features of the current moment is the source of resistance. Many of the sharpest warnings against nationalizing elections come not from Democrats, but from Republicans with institutional memory. Alongside Mr. Corbett stands John Jones III, a former federal judge appointed by George W. Bush. Both are associated with Keep Our Republic, a conservative-leaning civic group dedicated to countering false claims of voter fraud. Their argument is procedural, not ideological. Without a constitutional amendment, Judge Jones sees, presidential control of elections is a non-starter. Courts would intervene. Evidence would be demanded. Allegations would fail. Mr. Corbett tends to interpret the administration's behavior as bluster and bargaining tactics. Judge Jones is less sanguine. He detects a willingness to deploy every tool in the toolbox to disrupt elections. Short of direct administration, the distinction is crucial. The danger is not a federal takeover of polling booths. It is the accumulation of investigations, seizures of voter data, inflammatory rhetoric, and selective enforcement. Each measure is defensible in isolation. Together, they corrode trust. January 6 as prologue. No assessment of the present can ignore January 6, 2021. The assault on the Capitol was not an anomaly. It was the logical endpoint of a campaign to delegitimize an election before and after it occurred. Months of insinuation culminated in physical intimidation. Congress responded by clarifying that vice presidents cannot overturn results and by tightening certification procedures. Some loopholes were closed. Others remain. Laws, however, cannot compel good faith. Mr. Trump has since expressed regret at not deploying the National Guard to seize voting machines in 2020. This is not nostalgia. It is signaling, yet history offers a counterpoint. The same election that produced January 6 also produced institutional resistance, state officials who refused to falsify tallies. Judges who dismissed spurious claims, civil servants who simply counted votes and went home. Democratic failure was dramatic. Democratic resilience was mundane. And therefore, more durable. Why the system still holds. For all the noise emanating from Washington, American elections are not run there, they are run in counties. Thousands of them, in Pennsylvania alone, 67 districts administer voting. Each has its own staff, warehouses, printers, and databases. Their officials are rarely famous, often underpaid and habitually earnest. This is the Republic's quiet strength. Courts can block illegal orders. Legislatures can delay overreach. But it is local administrators who ensure that ballots exist. Polling stations open and results are certified. Decentralization frustrates would-be strongmen. It also limits the scale of failure. Disruption is possible at the margins. Turnout can be chilled. Narratives can be poisoned. But comprehensive capture remains elusive. There is no single switch to flip. The paradox of democratic sabotage. Mr. Trump's strategy reveals a paradox. To undermine elections, he must first persuade Americans that elections are already broken. But the louder he insists on fraud, the more he invites scrutiny. The more aggressively he pushes, the more institutions mobilize. The more he litigates, the more precedents he loses. Sabotage requires discretion. Populism supplies volume. This does not make the project harmless. Distrust corrodes democracy even when ballots are accurately counted. Cynicism weakens participation. Repetition normalizes falsehood, but it does impose limits. In the end, the 2026 midterms are unlikely to hinge on whether elections occur. They will. Ballots will be cast. Results will be certified. Courts will intervene when necessary. The more important question is whether enough voters believe that the process is meaningful. The American electoral system is battered and bruised, but operational. It is currently undergoing a prolonged stress test, administered by a president seemingly determined to explore its breaking point. So far, it has not broken. America has faced contested elections before. It has endured demagogues and demoralization. But rarely has it been subjected to such sustained internal pressure from the very office designed to safeguard its legitimacy. Its democracy is not collapsing. It is being audited, relentlessly, noisily, and often irresponsibly, by a chief executive who doubts its verdicts. The verdicts, for now, continue to stand.